Hello, and welcome to Pilgrim Lutheran Church and School's virtual Sunday School. This is an exciting week because it's the second week in a row when we're doing virtual Sunday School, but we'll also be meeting in person safely in the Gathering Garden to celebrate First Communion for a number of families. So congratulations to everybody who has made their first communion last week and this week. And I'm really happy that we're able to actually see each other. And in addition to having the online Sunday school. So this week, we are going to talk about Jesus, the Good Shepherd from John 10, chapters 11 to 18. So listen to this story and see if you can figure out who you think Jesus is. What role does he play? We'll find out when we read. Jesus was the best kind of leader. He cared about his friends and disciples. He wanted them to feel safe and strong and loved. "I am the Good Shepherd," said Jesus. The disciples were confused. Jesus was a teacher of people, not a shepherd of sheep. Jesus saw the disciples' puzzled faces. "What does a good shepherd do?" Jesus asked. "A good shepherd leads his sheep to food and water," Andrew said. "He protects the sheep from dangerous wolves," John added. "He finds lost sheep and brings them back to the flock," Peter answered. "I do all these things for you," Jesus said. "I lead you to the love of God. I protect you from harm. And when you lose your way, I find you. I am the Good Shepherd." The disciples nodded. Jesus cared for them, just like a good shepherd cares for his sheep. Jesus knew each of his disciples very well, like a good shepherd knows the sound and face of each of his sheep. Jesus looked at his disciples with love in his eyes. "The best shepherds love their sheep," he said. "I am the kind of shepherd who loves you enough to die for you. This is what I have learned from my Father." So when we hear that story and we ask the question, what does this mean? First, we hear that the disciples were confused. They thought Jesus was a teacher, and then they hear that he's a shepherd. But he explains that a little bit. And so do we find out that he can be both a teacher and a shepherd? I think he can. He can play two roles, just like each one of us plays many different roles in our lives. So what about you? Are you a kid? Are you a student? Are you maybe a son or a daughter or a brother or a sister or a friend? How about that? Each of you can also be multiple different things. And when we listen to this story about Jesus being a good shepherd, we remember that one of our goals in faith is to have Jesus in our hearts always and to spread the good news. And so a lot of times we can also be like Jesus and be the good shepherd and the teacher to people about all of the great things about what it means to be a follower of Jesus. But what does he say too? That he keeps people from harm, and that if you've lost your way, that he'll find you. And so sometimes even we can be the teachers and the good shepherds, but sometimes we find out that we're also what? We can be the sheep. Sometimes we might be the lost sheep, or we might be the ones that have a need. And what can we do when that happens? We can pray, right? We can pray and keep Jesus in our hearts, and he will find us, and he will lead the way, and he will make sure that our needs are met and that we can get back onto the right path. Just because we take a wrong turn doesn't mean that we are on that path forever. And so at any point, we can always find our way back. And that's the great thing about Jesus and being in his multiple roles, is that he will find us and he will bring us back. And that's the great thing about us in being able to be many different things. Sometimes we might do something wrong. We might sin, right? It happens. It happens to all of us. But we can pray and we can ask for forgiveness, and we can give forgiveness, and we can be back to being on the right path. So I think I really like this story because it helps us to think not so much in and or. You don't have to be one thing or another. It helps us to think in ways of both and. Both things can be true. There's an and there. And so we can be a little flexible with our thinking. And I think that is actually a really wonderful thing. So why don't you look for things this week that can have multiple different meanings or multiple different perspectives? Because very rarely is something just one thing. Even Jesus is more than one thing. He can be a teacher and a shepherd. Thank you for joining this week, and I look forward to seeing you again next week.